She arrived alone, which was the first thing people noticed without understanding why it mattered. The graduation hall of Marine Corps Recruit Depot Parris Island was a machine of precision and pride, filled with families clutching cameras and flowers. She was a small woman, brown-skinned and weathered, wearing a simple blue dress that had been ironed flat the night before on a hotel room bed. Her name was Elena, and she had taken to buses and a Greyhound that broke down outside Savannah to get here. Her son, Marcus, had written her letters for 13 weeks short. Disciplined letters that never complained. Never asked for anything, only said Mom. I'm running faster now, or Mom. The drill instructor said my bearing is improving. She had saved everyone in a shoebox under her bed back in Biloxi. She worked double shifts at a nursing home, cleaning bedpans and turning patients to prevent bed sores, and every extra penny went to this bus ticket. She had not told Marcus she was coming. He had said graduation was a long way, and she shouldn't strain herself. But Elena had missed his high school graduation because her car had died the morning of, and he had stood in his cap and gown scanning the crowd for a face that never came. He had never mentioned it, not once, but she saw it in the way his shoulders dropped when he found her later that evening at the diner where she was washing dishes. So no, she was not going to miss this. She sat in the bleachers near the back, not because she was shy, but because she did not want Marcus to see her before he marched. She wanted him to feel surprise, not worrying. The sun was punishing, and the air smelled of jet fuel and fresh paint. Around her, white families in matching polo shirts laughed and pointed at the parade deck. A grandmother behind her complained about the humidity. Elena said nothing. She just held her program, which she could not really read without squinting, and waited. The ceremony began with the precision of a heart beating. The graduating platoons moved as one body, boots hitting the asphalt in a rhythm that made the bleachers vibrate. Elena's eyes searched for Marcus, but every young man looked identical: buzzed heads, green uniforms, faces carved into stern masks. She found him in the 3rd platoon from the left, 3rd row, because of the way he held his chin. Even as a boy, Marcus had held his chin like he was listening to something far away. He walked past her section without turning his head, but she saw his eyes flicker. He had seen her, and for one tiny fracture of a second, his mask cracked into something soft before snapping back into marine. Elena pressed her hand to her chest and smiled so hard her jaw ached. The speeches happened. A general said words about honor and sacrifice. A chaplain prayed. Then came the moment when the new Marines were told to find their families. The bleachers erupted in chaos, screaming, hugging, crying, cameras flashing. Elena stood up slowly, her knees popping from years of standing on linoleum floors. She did not push or shove. She waited at the bottom of the bleachers, her hands clasped in front of her like she was holding a bird. And then Marcus was there. He was taller than she remembered, or maybe just straighter. He wrapped his arms around her and lifted her off the ground for one full second. You came, he said into her hair. His voice cracked on the second word. I told you I would, she said, even though she had not, because she had not been sure herself until the bus crossed the state line. They stood like that for a long moment, mother and son, while other families swirled around them. Then Marcus stepped back, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, and said, Mom, I want you to meet my drill instructor. He turned and gestured toward a cluster of officers standing near the reviewing stand. Elena nodded, smoothed her dress, and followed. The Marine Corps captain was not what Elena expected. She had imagined a screaming man with a vein in his forehead, but this man was calm, almost quiet, with a silver mustache and eyes that had seen things they did not want to remember. His nameplate said Castilla. He stood with his hands behind his back, watching the crowd with the patience of a lighthouse. Marcus introduced her with pride. Sir, this is my mother, Elena. Captain Castilla extended his hand, and Elena shook it. Her palm was rough from years of scrubbing, but his was rougher. He looked at her face, then at her arms, then back at her face. And then he froze. Not a dramatic freeze. Not a movie freeze. It was the freeze of a man whose brain had suddenly connected to wires that had been separate for 30 years. His eyes locked onto her left forearm, where a faded tattoo peeked out from under her sleeve. It was a small anchor, crudely done, with a date beneath it, 1989. The ink had bled into a blue-green blur, but the numbers were still readable. Captain Castilla did not let go of her hand. His mouth opened, then closed. His jaw tightened. Marcus looked between them, confused. Sir, he said, The captain did not answer. He took a half-step closer to Elena and said, in a voice so low only she could hear, "Where did you get that tattoo?" Elena pulled her hand back gently. She looked down at the anchor, then at her son, then at the captain. For a moment, she was not a nursing home worker in a blue dress. She was 20 years old again, alone, scared, and standing outside a recruiting station in San Diego. She touched the tattoo with her other hand. "A long time ago," she said. "In another life." Captain Castillo's eyes did not leave hers. "I know that anchor," he said. "I've only seen it once before. On a woman who pulled 3 Marines from a burning Humvee outside Fallujah in 2005. The noise of the crowd seemed to fade. Marcus stared at his mother. "Mom," he said. Elena said nothing. She just looked at the captain, and the captain looked at her. And the truth began to crawl out of the shadows where she had buried it for 19 years. The story came out in pieces, like shards of a broken mirror that still showed the same face. Elena had enlisted in the Marine Corps in 1989, right out of high school, because her family had no money and she had no other way to leave Biloxi. She was a logistics clerk, nothing glamorous, just a woman who moved boxes and filed papers and learned to swear like a sailor. She served for years, got the anchor tattoo with 3 other women in her unit on a drunken night in Okinawa, and left the Corps as a lance corporal. She married a man who said he loved her independence, but then tried to beat it out of her. She divorced him. She raised Marcus alone. She never talked about the Marines, because the Marines reminded her of a version of herself that no longer existed, a version that was strong and fast and believed she could change the world. That version died slowly, one double shift at a time. But Captain Castillo remembered a different story. In 2005, he was a young gunnery sergeant assigned to a convoy outside Fallujah. An IED hit the lead Humvee, and the vehicle flipped and caught fire. 3 Marines were trapped inside. Before the security team could react, a woman in civilian clothes ran past them, a small woman with a faded anchor tattoo on her arm. She was a military contractor's driver, passing through the area. She ignored the small arms fire. She ignored the flames. She crawled into the wreckage and pulled out 3 men, one by one, while her own hands blistered and her lungs filled with smoke. She saved them. Then she disappeared. No name, no paperwork, no medal. The Corps tried to find her for 6 months, but the contractor's records were lost in a fire, and the woman had used a fake name on her hiring forms. The 3 Marines she saved never forgot her. They called her the Anchor Angel. Captain Castillo had been one of the first men on the scene that day. He had seen her face for only a few seconds, but he had never forgotten the tattoo. And now, 19 years later, that same tattoo was standing in front of him on a graduation parade deck, attached to a woman in a blue dress who worked double shifts at a nursing home and had taken a broken Greyhound to see her son become a Marine. He asked her, "Was it you?" Elena looked at Marcus. Marcus looked like he had been struck by lightning. His mother had never told him she served. She had never told him she was a hero. She had only ever told him to be kind, to work hard, and to never let anyone tell him he wasn't enough. Elena took a breath. "I didn't save anyone," she said quietly. "I just did what anyone would do." Captain Castillo shook his head. "No," he said. "You did what almost no one would do." The days that followed were a blur of phone calls and folded flags. Marcus did not know how to feel. He was proud of his mother, yes, but he was also angry. Angry that she had hidden this from him. Angry that she had let him join the Corps without telling him that she had worn the same eagle, globe, and anchor. Angry that she had spent years apologizing for being just a nursing home aide when she had once been a hero. He confronted her that night in her cheap hotel room, the one with the stained carpet and the air conditioner that sounded like a dying generator. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. His voice was not loud. It was worse than loud. It was hurt. Elena sat on the edge of the bed, her hands folded in her lap. She looked older than she was. The hotel light made her skin look gray. "Because I didn't want you to join for the wrong reasons," she said. "I didn't want you to think you had to be a hero. I just wanted you to be a good man. The Corps makes good men, Marcus, but it also breaks them. I saw too many broken ones." Marcus sat down next to her. He took her hand, the one with the faded anchor. He traced the blurry lines with his thumb. "You pulled 3 men from a burning truck," he said. "You didn't break." Elena laughed, but there was no joy in it. I broke 1,000 times, she said. I just hit it better than most. They sat in silence for a long time. Outside, a train horn sounded in the distance. Then Marcus said, Captain Castilia wants to nominate you for recognition. He's been trying to find you for almost 20 years. He says the Corps owes you. Elena shook her head immediately. No, she said. I don't want a ceremony. I don't want my picture in a newspaper. I came here to see my son graduate. That's all I came for. Marcus looked at her. Really looked at her. He saw the calluses on her hands, the tiredness behind her eyes, the way she still flinched when a car backfired outside. He saw a woman who had spent her whole life carrying weight she never asked for. And he saw, for the first time, that she was not just his mother. She was a Marine. And Marines take care of their own. Okay, Mom, he said. No ceremony. But I'm telling you something right now. You're not going back to Biloxi to work double shifts alone. You're coming with me. I have a barracks room. It's small, but it's ours. Captain Castilia did not let the story die. He respected Elena's wish for no public ceremony, but he did something quieter, something more Marine Corps. He tracked down the 3 men she had pulled from the burning Humvee. 2 were still alive. 1 had lost a leg, but gained a construction company. Another had become a firefighter in Ohio. The 3rd had died of cancer in 2019, but his widow still lived in the same house in San Antonio. Captain Castilia arranged for all of them, the 2 surviving Marines, the widow, and their families, to meet Elena at a small park near Camp Lejeune 6 months later. Marcus drove his mother there. She tried to say no, but Marcus had learned his stubbornness from her, and he simply said, You don't get to say no to this. This is not about you. This is about them. The park was quiet, a few picnic tables, and a pond with ducks. Elena arrived wearing the same blue dress because she did not own another nice dress. The 2 surviving Marines saw her get out of the car, and they both started walking toward her. One had a prosthetic leg that clicked on the pavement. The other had a scar that ran from his ear to his collarbone. They stopped 3 feet away from her. The one with the scar spoke first. Ma'am, he said, my name is Danny. You pulled me out of that truck. I was on fire. I was screaming. And you didn't let go. He paused, wiped his nose with the back of his hand. I've been looking for you for 19 years. I named my daughter after you. Her name is Elena. The other Marine, the one with the prosthetic leg, stepped forward. He was crying openly, not trying to hide it. I don't remember the fire, he said. I remember your hands. You kept telling me to stay awake. You said, stay awake, baby, stay awake. I was 22 years old, and you called me baby, and I stayed awake because of you. The widow approached last. She was a small woman too, gray-haired and trembling. She held a folded flag in her hands, the same flag that had been draped over her husband's coffin. My husband, Michael, never stopped talking about you, she said. Every Thanksgiving, he would raise his glass and say, to the anchor angel, he would have wanted you to have this. She pressed the flag into Elena's hands. Elena looked down at the flag. Then she looked at Marcus, who was standing behind her with his arms crossed and tears running down his face. Then she looked at the 2 Marines and the widow. And for the first time in 19 years, Elena let herself cry. Not the quiet, private crying she did in the nursing home bathroom after a patient died. The loud, ugly, shaking crying of a woman who had been holding a mountain on her shoulders and finally let it fall. She hugged Danny. She hugged the man with the prosthetic leg. She hugged the widow. And then she turned to Marcus and said, I didn't save anyone. They saved me. They just didn't know it. That night, Marcus drove her back to the hotel. But it was not the same hotel. Marcus had used his re-enlistment bonus to rent her an apartment near the base, a small one, with a porch and a garden where she could grow tomatoes. He handed her the key and said, You're not alone anymore, Mom. You never were. You just forgot. Elena held the key in her palm. It was cold and small, but it felt heavier than the flag, heavier than the memory of fire, heavier than everything she had carried for 2 decades. She looked at her son, the Marine, and she smiled. Okay, she said. I'll stay. And she did. She stayed. She planted tomatoes. She went to Marcus's next graduation as a guest of honor, not in the back bleachers, but in the front row, with Captain Castilia sitting beside her and Danny and the other Marines standing behind her. And when the national anthem played, Elena stood up straight, put her hand over her heart, and for the first time in a very long time, she felt like the woman with the anchor tattoo again. Not broken, not tired, just home.